All right, so let's talk about Acadia National Park.
Hmm.
When you scroll through your phone or, you pick up one of those glossy travel magazines, everyone tells you the same story.
Hmm. The perfect autumn getaway.
Exactly. They tell you Acadia in the fall is the American dream come to life. And to be fair, visually it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the hook is just undeniable, isn't it?
It really is. You see those pictures of the just incandescent scarlet maples and the gold birch leaves.
And they're set against that impossibly deep blue Atlantic Ocean, with the dark granite bedrock just crashing right into the sea.
It's the definitive East Coast spectacle, that collision of land, sea, and color. I mean, it's a biological masterpiece. The aesthetics alone can, and for many people do, justify the trip.
And this is a huge but. Here's the immediate and I think critical pivot to reality, because we need to talk seriously about the data, the logistics, and frankly, the stress levels of people who have just come back from Bar Harbor in October.
Right, the ground truth versus the brochure picture.
Yes. Acadia is beautiful, no one is denying that. But your source material makes it so clear. It is a high-stakes, logistical gauntlet that's just wrapped up tightly in expensive flannel.
Logistical gauntlet is the perfect term for it.
And if you approach this trip casually, if you just think you're going to show up and have a nice time, you are signing up for a vacation that is logistically hostile, especially if you're a budget traveler.
Absolutely. You're paying a premium for friction.
You're paying Disney World prices, not for the rides, but for the privilege of standing in a really frustrated line on a very crowded cliff edge.
And that contrast, that friction you're talking about between the idyllic visual promise and the challenging ground reality,
Yeah.
that is exactly why this deep dive into your sources is so necessary.
Okay.
We're looking past the postcard photos. We're digging straight into the user experience, looking for that strategic knowledge. And I've got 3 just massive surprises for you. Things the glossy tourism brochures just completely leave out.
Ooh, I like this. Okay.
And these surprises, they completely undermine any expectation you might have of a casual, peaceful visit.
I'm intrigued. This is where it gets really, really interesting for our listeners. So what are these 3 major brochure surprises that are just waiting to derail the unprepared traveler?
Okay, so the first major shock is geographical. The
Yeah.
part of the park that offers true solitude, real tranquility, and arguably the best coastal viewing.
Yeah.
The part where you actually escape the crowds.
Yeah.
It's not actually on Mount Desert Island, MDI, which is, of course, where everybody goes.
Wait, what? So where is it?
It's the Scudic Peninsula. It's located a pretty substantial 45-minute drive around the bay back on the mainland. If you don't know that, you completely miss the actual magic of Acadia.
Wow. So the secret sauce is geographically separated from the main course.
Got it.
That was a big one. Okay, what about the second spoiler for the scenic seekers?
That famous Cadillac Mountain sunrise,
Oh,
the spiritual and photographic crown jewel of the entire experience.
The one everyone posts online. First to see the sunrise in the U.S.
That's the one. To do it, you have to navigate a vehicle reservation system that is, and I'm not exaggerating, significantly more competitive than buying tickets for a major, sold-out, global concert tour.
You're kidding?
No, it is an insane scramble. You're doing it months in advance or 2 days before, and if you miss that razor-thin window, you just don't get the view you drove hundreds, maybe thousands of miles to see.
So it's an exclusivity lottery just for a parking spot.
Yeah.
Okay, and the third spoiler, the one that's maybe the most disruptive.
Well, it kind of stems from the first 2. It's the casual expectation that you can just drive your car freely to all the key scenic areas.
Yeah.
Sand Beach, Thunderhole, Jordan Pond.
Right, like in any other national park.
That assumption is completely false.
Yeah.
Because of the overwhelming congestion and these new, very strict reservation requirements, private drivers you can't access many of these key points without extreme planning. You don't just need a vehicle to get there. You need a detailed, adaptive vehicle strategy to enjoy the island.
That perfectly defines the core friction point of this entire trip, doesn't it? It's the sheer volume of visitors.
The volume, yes.
And we aren't just dealing with, natural organic crowds. We're dealing with industrial scale tourism. We call them the leaf peepers, and they're arriving en masse. And a lot of this is facilitated by massive cruise ships.
I was just about to bring that up.
You have these liners docking in Bar Harbor, and they were literally dumping thousands of people, sometimes 3,000 or more, onto these fragile little streets right around 9 in the morning. It creates this, manufactured instantaneous crowd explosion.
And this industrial influx creates a critical pressure cooker effect on an infrastructure. The roads, the parking lots, the trailheads, that was simply not engineered to handle this level of sustained autumnal visitation. I mean, the park system is doing its best, but the sheer numbers are just overwhelming the design capacity.
So our mission today is clear. We're going to break down every dollar you spend, every extra trail mile you'll have to walk, and every safety risk you need to mitigate.
Every single one.
We need to determine, using your shared sources, strategically and financially, if this beautiful Atlantic rock is worth the required time, the effort, and the expense. Or if you should just preserve your sanity and your savings and pivot your trip to the White Mountains of New Hampshire instead.
We need to make sure you don't go bankrupt trying to buy an iconic sandwich or get stuck in a 3-hour traffic jam just to see a pond. That's strategic knowledge. That's the real value here.
Okay, let's begin. Let's tackle the core problem in our first segment, the contextual deception, that gap between solitude and industrial tourism. And the root of the deception, like you pointed out, starts right there on your phone. Let's talk about the cannibalization of October.
It's a profound shift, and it's driven almost entirely by the visual economy of social media. Before this huge digital migration, October it was reliably a true shoulder season.
Right, I remember that. Quieter.
It was a lovely, almost secret time. The weather was crisp, the leaves were peaking, and maybe, 30% of the overwhelming summer crowd had just dissipated. It left room for contemplation.
That idyllic scenario is completely, totally extinct. Now, you open your feed, and it's just this endless, visually perfect scroll of someone hiking the Beehive Trail. Or you see the reflection of the mountains on Jordan Pond, the quiet coastline path.
And there's no one else in the shot.
Never. And that selective, strategic photography creates this deeply false sense of serenity and emptiness. You think you're discovering something peaceful and secluded.
And that is the deception. It's perpetuated by strategic timing and, strategic filtering. When we analyze the data now, October visitation numbers are not just approaching, they are directly rivaling the peak visitor counts of July and August.
So it's not a shoulder season at all.
It is fundamentally a second, equally crowded peak season. Only now you have the added complexity of colder weather and, frankly, much higher seasonal pricing.
So you arrive expecting to hear the meditative sound of the waves crashing against the granite cliffs.
Which is a beautiful sound.
It is. But what you actually get, if you stick to that main scenic loop road between, say, 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., is the sound of idling SUVs, the incessant air brakes of these massive tour buses, and people shouting instructions or, frustrations at their travel companions. It's the actual sound reality of industrial tourism trying to coexist with fragile nature.
And this noise and congestion, it's amplified by the sheer geographical and infrastructural pinch points of the park. Acadia is deceptively extensive. It covers a significant amount of territory, but it is not compact. It's not easily navigable on foot.
You can't just park and walk everywhere.
Not at all. Since it's mostly located on Mount Desert Island, the geography itself inherently limits how you get in and out. It's huge, which means you must have a strong vehicle strategy, whether that's your personal car relying on a bus or using our cheat code we'll get to later, the e-bike.
And the trouble begins before you even touch parkland, often hours before you even check into your overpriced motel. It starts with the entry gridlock onto the island itself.
Absolutely. The main causeway onto MDI creates this critical, unavoidable initial pinch point. Route 3 is the only main artery that funnels all incoming island traffic, tourists, locals, supply trucks, buses, all of it onto the island.
So it's a bottleneck.
It's the definition of a bottleneck. Your sources stress that if you arrive on a Friday afternoon in October, you are virtually guaranteed to sit in frustrating gridlock, sometimes for hours, just trying to cross that causeway. This immediately sets the tone for your trip. Your first impression isn't majestic coastline, it's infrastructure failure and my personal time being wasted.
And that infrastructure failure just migrates with you when you try to park. The mental expectation, which seems so reasonable in most national parks, is that you'll just drive up to a famous viewpoint or a trailhead, like Jordan Pond or Sand Beach.
Find a spot in a few minutes.
Yeah, and start your hike. Easy.
But the reality is what your sources call parking rage. You will spend 45 minutes easily circling that overcrowded Jordan Pond lot. You'll become one of those drivers just stalking people, walking back to their cars, anxiously watching for the brake lights, playing that high-stakes game of chicken with other equally desperate drivers.
And if you don't get a spot?
Ultimately, if you're unsuccessful, you just leave. In a rage. Having burned precious time, gas, and a lot of emotional energy, that logistical frustration, the inability to actually access what you paid dearly to see, that is a defining differentiator for Acadia in the autumn.
And the demographics of that frustration, they're different too. There's a distinct vibe shift in autumn that changes the feel of the whole conflict. In the summer, you've got the typical, slightly more leisurely family vacation crowd. They're focused on ice cream, keeping the kids entertained.
Autumn skews noticeably older, generally wealthier, and critically far more aggressive about their photography and their itinerary. This is a mission-driven crowd.
Mission-driven, I like that.
They've traveled specifically for the peak light in that specific autumnal moment. You should absolutely expect to be asked, or perhaps even ordered, to move out of someone's perfect frame because you are ruining their shot. There's a tangible, higher sense of territoriality and urgency among the October crowd compared to the July crowd.
And that vibe really culminates in the Bar Harbor Hub, this, picturesque central town. It's the nerve center of the island, and it's a complicated place to love.
It is intensely cute from an architectural perspective. The historical preservation is genuinely charming, but it has this specific, powerful smell and olfactory signature that really speaks to its dual nature.
Okay, describe it.
It simultaneously smells like brine and cold sea air, which is lovely, but then also the sickly sweet aroma of fudge from the ubiquitous candy shops and the acrid smell of diesel fumes from the tour buses and the cruise ship tenders that are just constantly idling.
So brine, fudge, and diesel.
Brine, fudge, and diesel. And despite the historical charm, every single shop is selling the exact same variations of a moose-themed t-shirt or a lighthouse trinket. It is unequivocally a commercial tourist trap built around a historical facade.
And that's where the realization of what you call gated wildness first really sets in. Your initial impression is realizing that everything you want to do, everything you thought was inherently free in a national park, is now regulated, it's competitive, and it requires some kind of digital credential.
Exactly. You want to drive up Cadillac Mountain, you need a specific, non-transferable QR code. You want to camp, that was booked 6 months ago, solid. Or your only alternative is to sleep in your car 45 minutes away in a Walmart parking lot, which is a whole other time sink.
Right.
The source material highlights this critical feeling. The wildness is heavily gated. It's accessible only to those who planned with military precision months in advance, or crucially, those who can afford to buy their way around the friction we're describing.
But I want to pause the frustration for a moment here, because we have to talk about the aesthetic justification for all of this. Because there was a moment, even amidst all that frustration, when all that commerce just evaporated. And I understood why people tolerate the hassle.
Okay.
It happened on that first morning, right as the sun should have been coming up.
Yeah.
But instead it was just thick, heavy Maine fog.
That early morning reprieve is the psychological release valve for the entire trip. Tell me about that moment again, because I think it's vital.
It was 6 a.m. I was walking the shore path right in Bar Harbor before the first tour bus had started its engine, before the first cruise ship tender had dropped off his passengers.
So before the machine turns on.
Before the machine turns on. You get the silence. You get that profound, damp cold that penetrates right into your bones.
Right.
And you get the lonely, deeply resonant sound of the foghorns warning ships off the granite. The air quality, that mix of pine and salt. It's absolutely elite.
It makes you feel intensely connected to the raw, primal coast, doesn't it? It just strips away all the modern clutter. Was it just the silence, or did the scale of the granite cliffs and the ocean feel different without the visual clutter of the town and all the tourists?
The scale felt enormous. It was the only time the park felt truly, truly empty. The fog acted like this natural filter, just eliminating the view of the hotels and the gift shops, and it left only the granite, the water, and the sound. That was the moment I got it. I understood the profound potential value of the trip. It makes you feel incredibly alive.
Yet, the underlying tension throughout the rest of the daylight hours when you are competing for space, that remains. The feeling is that nature is winning, but just barely.
Barely is the right word.
You look one way, and it's a stunning, endless Atlantic Vista black granite. You turn your head 90 degrees, and it's a gift shop selling a $40 sweatshirt that says "cool as a moose." To truly enjoy Acadia, you have to mentally edit out the commerce, edit out the crowds, and focus intensely on the unique coast. But that requires conscious effort, a kind of mental gymnastics, which is the exact opposite of what most people are looking for on a relaxing vacation.
That difficulty, that necessity of mentally editing out the commerce, it leads us straight to the inevitable question. What is this coastal effort actually costing us? So let's talk brass tacks in our next segment, analyzing the Acadia Premium. Get your spreadsheets out, because this is where the budget dreams often die a very swift, painful death.
The park absolutely demands a premium price point in this highly compressed autumn season. And we have to start with accommodation because it is the single biggest pain point and resource drain for every single traveler profile.
The scarcity is brutally real, and it drives these astronomical price hikes based purely on proximity. Let's break down the options for you.
For the budget backpacker traveler, the options are, they're almost non-existent. Hostels, which are standard budget options in high-traffic tourist areas, are virtually nowhere to be found here.
Okay, so no hostels. What about camping?
The two wonderful campgrounds inside the park, Blackwoods and Seawall, they charge about $30 a night, which is an amazing budget price. However,
There's always a however.
securing those campsites requires military-grade logistical planning. You are competing against thousands of automated scoops and hyper-prepared retirees the very minute the reservation window opens, which is often 6 months in advance.
If you don't secure that golden ticket, what's your alternative?
The alternative is either sleeping in your car, which is often discouraged or even illegal on MDI, or driving a soul-crushing 45 minutes off-island to a cheaper chain motel or some budget lodging in a town like Ellsworth or Trenton.
So you're losing all that time.
Right, and while those might cost maybe $150 to $200 a night, that 90-minute round-trip commute every single day just consumes all your time and your gas budget. It completely defeats the purpose of paying a premium to be on the island in the first place. The low-cost entry point is logistically hostile.
Okay, let's move up to the mid-range traveler. The prices here are truly staggering for the quality of the product you're getting.
You are looking at a consistent $250 to $400 a night for standard lodging. And by standard, I often mean a very basic 2-star hotel or an aged motel room right in Bar Harbor.
And the key takeaway here is that the quality of the room rarely, if ever, justifies that price. You're paying entirely for the proximity to the coast and the Acadia brand name.
100%. To put that in perspective, that $350 price point in the White Mountains of New Hampshire would likely get you a luxurious boutique stay with a hot breakfast included. In Bar Harbor, it gets you a standard, sometimes cramped room. You are paying a 100% inflation factor just for the ZIP code.
And for the listener looking for the high-end experience, the cost is basically limitless.
The sky really is the limit. Luxury inns and resorts, particularly those with water views or historical cachet, they're easily in the $800 to $1,500 a night range during the peak foliage season. The entire accommodation market is just catastrophically skewed because the supply is fixed and the demand is seasonal and overwhelming.
All right, let's talk about consumption costs. Let's start with the park entrance and then move on to the famous lobster roll.
Okay, let's acknowledge the single piece of genuine value here. The park vehicle pass is $35 for 7 consecutive days. That is genuinely reasonable value for access to an entire national park.
It is. I agree with that.
But the food shock, as we're calling it, quickly and dramatically offsets that value.
Okay, the infamous lobster roll. The essential Maine culinary experience. What's the damage?
Yes, the price point for a single lobster roll, which, remember, is essentially just a cold or warm salad of lobster meat served on a bun, it currently fluctuates wildly based on the market price of fresh lobster. It often swings between $25 and $40.
$40 for one sandwich.
For one sandwich, it's a highly variable and hugely expensive lunch item. And if you plan a sit-down dinner with an appetizer and a drink in Bar Harbor, you are easily spending $60 to $80 per person, and often much, much more.
So if you're forced into that low-end budget approach because you couldn't get that $30 campsite, what are you eating?
You're forced into self-reliance and some unexpected culinary pivots. That means relying on grocery store sandwiches, which might still run you $15 to $20 a day just for lunch and dinner supplies. Or, as our source material noted, hilariously relying on local gas station pizza places. And while they were surprisingly decent, that's not exactly the authentic culinary experience you drove all the way to Maine for.
No, not really. What about activity costs? Because, I mean, technically the hiking is free once you're parked.
Correct. But utilizing the park's unique infrastructure, that requires payment. The single best experience in the park, as we'll discuss, is biking the carriage roads. Bike rentals, even standard ones, are about $50 a day. E-bikes are often more.
And the water activities.
If you want to enhance your coastal perspective, a kayak tour is around $80, and a standard sightseeing boat cruise is $60. The costs, as your sources consistently note, they don't stop at the entry gate. They compound rapidly, just chipping away at the perceived value of that initial $35 pass.
Okay, let's synthesize all of this inflation into the value proposition matrix. I want to focus on that coast tax we discussed. Why is Acadia so much more expensive than its regional counterparts?
We need to run the hard numbers. The standard traveler, so the mid-range guest, staying in a bar harbor motel, enjoying one nice dinner, a few lobster rolls, they are easily looking at $350 to $450 per person per day.
Wow. Let's compare that directly to a competing foliage destination. Let's say the White Mountains, specifically around the Kankamagus Highway, during that same October peak.
Okay. In the Whites, standard clean motel lodging often runs closer to $150 to $200 a night. Food costs are substantially lower because you aren't paying that immediate coastal lobster premium. A good pub dinner might be $30 to $40 per person.
And you have unlimited free hiking access.
Unlimited. And gas costs might even be slightly lower due to better centralized infrastructure. We estimate the equivalent standard traveler experience in the White Mountains would be closer to $200 to $250 a day.
So the analysis is stark. You're paying a minimum 75 to 100% inflation factor, the coast tax, just for the brand name of Acadia, and that specific visual combination of granite, ocean, and maples.
Exactly. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth $400 a day simply to hike and see leaves? Numerically, no, it is not. The verdict on value is that the park is only worth it if you can either secure the absolute cheapest accommodation 6 months ahead of time, which is nearly impossible, or if you can afford to completely ignore the costs, insulating yourself from the inflation. The average traveler gets squeezed hard by that premium.
Since we've established the cost of failure, let's pivot and save our listeners some serious headache and money. We're going to discuss the solutions in our next segment, the logistical gauntlet, which covers the planning traps and, most importantly, the crucial cheat codes.
This is the strategic knowledge that separates the prepared traveler from the perpetually frustrated tourist. And we have to start with the toughest hurdle. Trap number 1, the Cadillac Mountain Gatekeeper. It's the highest point on the East Coast, a bucket list destination, especially for sunrise.
And naturally, everyone is targeting the summit for that perfect, brag-worthy photo opportunity.
This is where the booking reality hits you like a ton of bricks. You absolutely cannot just drive up. A strict vehicle reservation is required to mitigate the overwhelming traffic. The system is split. They release 30% of the reservations 90 days out, allowing for long-term planning.
But the critical 70%,
the
ones most travelers rely on.
Those are released only 2 days before, at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
And the sources confirm these reservations they vanish in an instant, correct?
They sell out in seconds, not minutes, seconds. You need to be logged into the official website, ready to click, with your payment information auto-filled and saved. If you miss this tiny window, the hard advice remains. Do not drive up to the entrance gate hoping to beg or plead your case. The rangers are instructed to turn you around immediately, no exceptions.
So if you fail the lottery, what's the fix? What does the disappointed sunrise hunter do?
The primary fix is simple, but it demands effort. Hike it. Walking up the mountain or even bicycling it does not require a reservation. It is a challenging, dark hike if you're aiming for sunrise, so you'll need good headlamps and appropriate gear, but it completely bypasses the reservation nightmare and offers a genuine physical reward.
Are there any other spots?
Absolutely. Utilize alternative sunrise spots that offer an almost as good view without the reservation stress. I'm thinking of places like Schooner Head or the scenic loop pull-offs near Otter Cliffs, which are far more accessible.
Okay, let's move to trap number 2, the Loop Road counterclockwise fantasy. Driving the Park Loop Road seems like the simplest item on the itinerary, but it's full of these subtle, maddening complexities.
It's entirely deceptive. The main scenic drive is largely one way for a long stretch. And that sounds efficient, but it's actually a logistical trap. The complexity comes in navigating the key turnoffs, which are often poorly signed or they just appear suddenly.
And the consequences of missing a turn are just disproportionate to the mistake.
Precisely. If you miss the single turn for a highly desired spot like Sand Beach, you're in serious trouble. You literally have to drive the entire 27-mile loop in high traffic just to get back to that exact point. In peak October traffic, that one small error can easily cost you an hour and a half of valuable daylight and sanity.
And even if you execute the turn perfectly, you immediately hit the parking pitfall.
The sources confirm Sand Beach parking, Thunderhole parking, and Jordan Pond parking will be full during peak hours. That's a guarantee. And because the road is one way, if the lot is full, vehicles must keep moving. Stopping in the road to wait for a spot, hoping someone pulls out, that is strictly forbidden and actively enforced. You cannot loiter. You are forced to complete the loop, whether you want to or not.
So the fix here is absolute diligence. You have to study the park map like a general planning a military maneuver. Know your pull-offs precisely, and have 2 or 3 backups planned if the first parking lot you aim for is full. That preparation is mandatory.
It is. Now let's discuss the common, well-meaning advice that fails spectacularly in autumn.
Trap number 3, the Island Explorer bus fallacy. The universal advice you hear is, oh, just take the free shuttle bus, it solves all your traffic problems.
And in the summer, that might be a partial solution. But in October, the reality is starkly different, and it often creates more frustration. The schedule is drastically reduced after Labor Day, routes are cut back, and most critically for the high volume, the buses are full.
So you could be waiting for nothing.
You might wait an hour at a stop just for a bus to drive right past you because it is already at capacity. This happens all the time, especially for popular routes like those serving Jordan Pond or the major trailheads.
Waiting an hour only to be left stranded? That is truly trip-ruining frustration, especially when your daylight is so limited. So we need the ultimate workaround. What is the absolute non-negotiable cheat code that solves the majority of Acadia's logistical problems?
Rent e-bikes. This is the single critical insight that bypasses the friction. The genius lies in the infrastructure. Cars are banned entirely from the famous carriage roads, which is this magnificent network of over 45 miles of car-free passage built by John D. Rockefeller, Jr.
Let's elaborate on this cheat code because this really addresses the core problem of congestion. What kind of e-bikes are we talking about here, and what does this access allow you to do?
You'll want what's called a Class 1 or Class 2 e-bike. It provides pedal assistance, and that e-bike capability allows you to utilize these magnificent roads without physical exhaustion, easily climbing the gradual grades that Rockefeller engineered. Critically, you bypass all the traffic, all the parking lot congestion, and all the reservation nightmares.
Okay, where do you rent them and what does it cost? Because this definitely factors into that cost tax.
The rental shops are primarily found in Bar Harbor and Southwest Harbor. You should expect to pay $60 to $80 for a full-day rental of a decent quality e-bike. And while this is an added cost, you have to think of it this way. It effectively buys you out of the 2 biggest frustrations of the entire trip, which are traffic and parking.
And what are the specific routes we should target with these e-bikes? Give us the detail.
The carriage road system is built with numbered signposts, so you'll want to download a map. The best routes are the Jordan Pond Loop, which lets you see the pond without fighting for an impossible parking spot, and the Eagle Lake Loop.
What makes them so special?
They feature these magnificent granite bridges, dense forest canopy, and these uninterrupted tunnels of red and gold maples. Gliding along those perfectly groomed, crushed stone paths without worrying about an RV passing you is what your source material described as pure, unadulterated bliss. It is the best experience available in the park's interior.
We also need to talk about basic logistical preparation for connectivity and terrain. First, the cell signal reality.
Assume it's garbage. Just start there. Do not rely on Google Maps Live or cell service for any critical navigation. The dead zones are massive, particularly near Jordan Pond, throughout the interior carriage roads, and all over the quieter western side of the island, the quiet side.
So what's the solution?
You must download offline maps for the entire island before you leave your accommodation. If you don't, you will be relying on paper maps, which, while romantic, are slow and difficult to read in a moving car.
And the gear. Autumn weather on the coast is famously schizophrenic.
Layers are non-negotiable. You could start your 6.0 a.m. walk at 40 degrees Fahrenheit with fog and be sweating at 70 degrees by noon when the sun breaks through. You must bring a windbreaker or a waterproof shell, even if it looks sunny. The coastal wind is relentless, and it cuts right through thin cotton clothing, making damp weather feel much, much colder than the thermometer indicates.
And a final emphatic safety warning regarding footwear. We need to be very clear about this, specifically targeting that granite.
This is a matter of physical safety, not fashion. The granite rocks that make up the coastline and many of the trails are lethal when they're wet or covered in damp, decomposing leaves. They become unbelievably slick. The source material specifies, do not wear fashion sneakers, especially anything with a flat rubber sole. Appropriate, lug-soled, waterproof hiking footwear is absolutely mandatory for safety on the coastal and interior trails. The park's beauty hides very real danger.
With those logistics covered, let's move into segment 4. This is where we explore the inherent safety risks, the major disappointments, and the true rewards. We need to start with coastal safety, because the illusion of safety here is one of the biggest dangers Acadia presents.
It's a key point. Acadia feels incredibly manicured. The trails are clearly marked, there are clean railings, there are even tea houses. It feels civilized. But the Maine coast operates on its own terms. It does not care about your vacation plans or your need for a selfie.
So what's the biggest risk?
The biggest immediate risk is the lure of the edge. The coast is a terrifyingly jagged collection of granite cliffs, deep fissures, and slippery shelves. Tourists die here every year because they step out onto wet rocks for a photo, believing the ground is stable. They often lose their footing on surfaces that are slicked with salt spray and moss.
And the most invisible, unpredictable threat? Rogue waves.
They are absolutely real, and they should be respected, even on what appears to be a perfectly calm, beautiful day. The ocean surge is unpredictable on this deeply carved coastline. A wave can surge unexpectedly, crash against the cliff face, and the backwash can sweep an adult right off the granite shelf and into the water. Never, ever turn your back on the ocean here.
And once you're in that water, you have severe time limits.
The water temperature, even in October, is dangerously cold. It's hovering around 55 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Hypothermia sets in rapidly, often within minutes, profoundly affecting your ability to swim or even stay conscious. It is a terrifying proposition, and the Park Service often faces significant difficulty executing rapid water rescues in the coves and near sheer drop-offs like otter cliffs.
We also need to detail the slipperiness, especially at those high-traffic spots like Thunder Hole or near Otter Point.
That granite near the coast is constantly coated in a thin film of salt spray, fine mist, and marine organisms. That invisible layer mixed with the damp October air acts exactly like ice. The surface friction just vanishes, creating a lethal, slick surface. Even if the sun is out, you have to assume the granite near the water is treacherous and walk with extreme caution.
What about hidden dangers not related to the ocean? The hazards that visitors might think have vanished once autumn hits.
Ticks. This is a massive, critical point that people overlook because it's not summer. People assume ticks are dormant or gone once the first frost hits, but they are absolutely not. Maine has a massive year-round Lyme disease problem.
So what do you do?
The necessary discomfort here is crucial. You must tuck your pants into your socks. Yes, you will look uncool, but you must do it. Use permethrin on your clothing, and conduct thorough tick checks every single evening.
And driving hazards on the winding, heavily trafficked MDI roads.
Deer collisions are a huge problem on Mount Desert Island, especially at dusk and dawn when the light is low and visibility drops quickly. The deer population is large, and they move unpredictably between the dense woods and the roadside.
And tourists are probably speeding.
The general tourist tendency to speed driving 50 miles per hour in a 35 zone because you're late for dinner is literally asking to total your rental car on a buck. You need to drive defensively and slowly here.
Finally, let's address the common misunderstanding about the trail difficulty.
The park's brochure often labels the coastal trail, or similar walks, as easy, suggesting a leisurely stroll. It is not. Acadia's trails, even the mid-range ones, are rooty, rocky, and they often require actual scrambling over uneven terrain.
Not a walk in the park, then.
Not at all. They feature sudden, steep rock steps and uneven ground. This makes them surprisingly strenuous and potentially treacherous for visitors with bad knees or if you're trying to manage toddlers. This is not a flat, manicured boardwalk experience, and the difficulty is often understated.
Okay, now that we've covered the risks, let's talk about the major disappointments, the iconic things you should absolutely skip to save time and money.
I will happily start with the sacred cow of Acadia tourism, the Jordan Pond House popovers.
Wait. I have to push back here. It's iconic. I've seen the photos, the white-gloved waiters, the perfect view of the Bubbles Mountains. For $15, you get the ambience of sitting lakeside, sipping tea. Isn't the historical experience worth the mediocre quality?
That is the defense, I'll give you that. But let's analyze the reality of the situation. It is a meticulously designed factory built to extract money from nostalgic tourists. That ambience, while pretty, comes with a mandatory 90-minute wait just for a table during peak lunchtime in October.
90 minutes.
90. You are paying a premium on your most valuable resource, your time, just to sit down. And what do you get? The popovers themselves are They're fundamentally fine, but they are hollow, puffed air. The tea is often lukewarm, and the bill for what you receive is frankly offensive given the hassle and the wait time.
So the logistical friction nullifies the aesthetics value.
Exactly. The time cost is just too high. The recommendation remains decisive. Skip it entirely. It is not worth the time or the money. You can buy a good popover mix at a local grocery store for $5 and make them yourself at home with your own preferred tea. The experience has become overwhelmingly about the nostalgia and very little about the food quality or the value.
Okay, I'm convinced. My major disappointment was the famous Thunderhole. I'd seen the brochure photos of this massive explosion of seawater hitting the cliff.
And that is the deception of the marketing material. Thunderhole is dramatically anticlimactic unless two very specific conditions are met simultaneously. You must be there exactly at mid-tide, and there must be a significant ocean swell or storm surge running through the bay.
Which means you need to research the tide charts beforehand and potentially hope for bad weather to get a good show.
Precisely. If those two things don't align, it is literally just a wet crack in a rock with a small, sputtering splash. When we were there, we stood with 200 other people, all staring intently at a wet fissure, waiting for a dramatic explosion that never materialized. It was the definition of anticlimactic and a huge waste of valuable daylight when there are so many other, more authentic coastal viewing points available.
So let's pivot away from the traps and the disappointments and focus on the true highlights, the moments and locations that actually justified the Acadia premium and all this logistical effort.
Best moment 1, the Schoodic Peninsula. This is the ultimate essential cheat code for true solitude and coastal drama. As we said, it's located 45 minutes around the bay on the mainland section of Acadia.
You call this the best part of the park. Why is it so much better than MDI?
The crowds here are negligible. Our sources confirm that during a 2-hour drive and walk on the 10-mile scenic loop, you might only see 3 other people. The lack of commercial infrastructure, no Bar Harbor-style gift shops, no huge parking lots, it forces a different kind of experience.
What does that experience look and feel like?
It allows for genuine, profound solitude. You can sit on a rocky outcrop for an hour, listen to the powerful waves crash against the black granite cliffs, watch the local lobster boats haul traps in the morning fog, and be surrounded by yellow birch trees and the immense Atlantic, all without the sound of idling SUVs or people yelling about their parking spot. This is the true, quiet, powerful magic of the Maine coast. It's the Acadia of 50 years ago.
And your second best moment leverages that infrastructural cheat code we detailed earlier.
Yes. Carriage roads biking. The incredible engineering that John D. Rockefeller Jr. put into these roads is staggering. They are meticulously built with crushed stone, creating a surface that is just perfect for gliding.
Tell me more about why the e-bike specifically makes this experience so transformative.
Getting out there on an e-bike, cutting through that dense forested tunnel of red maples near Eagle Lake or Witch Hole Pond, without having to worry about traffic or being sideswiped by an RV, it's the definitive Acadia interior experience. The elevation changes are gentle, allowing easy passage for travelers of any fitness level. It's pure, unadulterated bliss and the most effective workaround for the MDI crowds.
We are entering our final strategic analysis segment, the Worth It Matrix and Alternatives. Let's start with where the crowd-averse traveler should go instead, if they want 80% of the vibe for significantly less cost and hassle.
If the crowds and logistical stress of Acadia are a complete deal breaker for you, you have excellent, highly scenic, and less expensive options nearby.
Option 1, Camden Hills State Park, Maine.
This park is located only about an hour south of Acadia, and it offers a huge percentage of the dramatic coastal scenery. You have Mount Batty looking out over the beautiful harbor, the classic fall leaves, and the ocean view. The town of Camden itself is incredibly cute and historical.
And the cost difference.
It is easily 50% cheaper than Bar Harbor and 90% less crowded in the autumn. It provides a much higher enjoyment to friction ratio for the coastal experience.
Option 2, the White Mountains, New Hampshire.
If your primary goal is spectacular foliage and demanding serious hiking, then you must forget the ocean and head to the Whites. The Kancamagus Highway, for sheer density and scale of leaf-peeping drama, absolutely destroys Acadia.
Wow, destroys it.
The infrastructure is generally better designed to handle large amounts of internal traffic, though it's still busy. You lose the fresh, salty air and the lobster, but you gain sanity, vast, rugged trail systems, and a much better bang for your lodging buck.
And if the listener insists on doing Acadia, but wants to incorporate genuine wildness afterward to decompress,
we recommend a powerful combo itinerary. Spend 2 intense, highly planned days in Acadia. Utilize all our cheat codes, especially the e-bikes. Then drive north to Lubeck and Campobello Island. This is the easternmost point in the U.S. It is wild, virtually empty, and reportedly feels exactly like Acadia did 50 years ago before the industrial tourism boom took hold. It's a perfect palate cleanser.
All right, let's run the final verdict matrix based on traveler type. Is Acadia National Park in autumn worth the cost and the hassle?
We have to be unflinchingly honest about the different experience levels here, as the park definitely favors certain budgets.
Let's start with the backpacker. Budget less than 100 day.
Verdict. No, absolutely not worth the stress.
Why is the verdict so absolute?
The park is fundamentally hostile to the budget traveler. We've established there are no hostels. Camping is impossible to secure without 6 months of military-grade planning. And the free public transit, the bus, is unreliable in the autumn. This logistical failure inevitably leads to stress, massive time loss, and sudden budget-breaking accommodation costs. We suggest they seek out Baxter State Park or the White Mountains instead, where the infrastructure and accommodations support true backpacking.
Okay. Traveler, the mid-range couple. Budget around 400 a day.
Verdict, yes, with strict conditions.
This is a critical contingent, yes. What are the non-negotiable conditions they must meet to ensure success?
Extreme diligence and military-level planning. They must commit to early rising. We're talking 6:00 a.m. starts daily to beat the Bar Harbor crowds. They must rent e-bikes. That is non-negotiable for maximizing trail access and bypassing parking. And they have to skip the famous tourist restaurants like Jordan Pond House and actively seek out less publicized local spots to save money and time.
So it's a mission, not a vacation.
If they treat the trip like a challenging but achievable mission, it can be incredibly romantic and visually rewarding. If they try to wing it, they will absolutely 100% fight in the car over parking, reservations, and wasted time.
Traveler, the family with young kids.
Verdict? Maybe.
What are the primary trade-offs for families?
The Junior Ranger program is robust and excellent, which is a major positive for educational engagement. However, the non-boardwalk trails we discussed are treacherous for toddlers. They're rooty, rocky, and slippery. The sheer volume of the crowds makes keeping track of young children highly stressful, especially near sheer drop-offs. Families must absolutely avoid the high-risk, ladder-based trails like the Beehive or Precipice.
So what's the key to making it work?
The key mitigation strategy here is staying in a cottage with a full kitchen. That allows you to save a ton of money and time on the prohibitive Bar Harbor food costs.
And finally, the luxury traveler. Budget unlimited.
Verdict, absolutely.
Why so certain?
If you are wealthy enough, you are insulated from virtually all the friction. You can stay at a high-end, classic inn like the Claremont, which is located on the quiet side, bypassing the MDI congestion altogether. You can hire a private boat charter to see the coast from the water, bypassing the land crowds, and enjoy fine dining without worrying about the bill. They can effectively buy their way out of all the logistical frustrations we've outlined, maximizing the solitude and the beauty.
So what's the overall encompassing strategic takeaway for everyone, regardless of their budget?
Acadia is not a simple nature retreat. It is a complex logistics puzzle that is masked as a nature retreat. Success hinges on planning.
What are the optimal time to go if you insist on the autumn foliage?
Mid-October, specifically after Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples' Day weekend. That major holiday crowd spike drops by about 30%, but the foliage is still highly attractive. It might be slightly past peak, but it's still beautiful and substantially quieter.
And where should you base yourself to maximize sleep and minimize immediate congestion?
Southwest Harbor, what is universally known as the quiet side. Stay away from the Bar Harbor hub if your goal is anything resembling peace and quiet before 8 a.m.
The final psychological acceptance we need our listener to internalize before embarking on this challenging but rewarding journey.
It is entirely worth it for the unique smell of the air, for the visual power of that coastline, and for those brief moments of solitude, but only. Only if you fully accept that you are inherently part of the traffic you hate. That acknowledgement is step one toward a successful, less frustrated trip.
A final synthesis of the essentials. You need the Cadillac reservation knowledge, you need the e-bike cheat code, and you need to internalize the reality of the coastal tax and the required budget.
Those are the tools that separate the prepared traveler from the panicked tourist who is circling a parking lot for the 15th time.
The ultimate final instruction remains. Plan and book those critical elements, especially accommodation and Cadillac access, 6 months out, or frankly, spend your money elsewhere.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought about Acadia's unique duality. The park's incredible infrastructural crown jewel, those beautifully engineered car-free carriage roads built by John D. Rockefeller Jr., provides the single best, most accessible experience in the entire park. But that same massive private infrastructure investment is intrinsically linked to the industrial tourism machine that funnels these massive crowds to MDI.
It's the challenge of modern conservation, isn't it? How do you allow access without destroying the thing people are coming to access?
Precisely. If the absolute best, most serene parts of this national park for the people require either intense military-grade pre-planning, like winning the Cadillac Reservation lottery, or expensive mitigation, like renting e-bikes or staying at private high-end inns to avoid the fray, this raises a profound question about equity and access.
Which is?
Does the concept of a national park truly hold up when the only way to genuinely experience the solitude and the magic is essentially to buy your way out of the friction?
Something to mull over as you tuck those pants into your socks and download those offline maps. Safe travels and happy deep diving.
See you out there on the quiet side.